I want to talk a little bit about what we discussed and how we won the debate. And it was an interesting one to win a debate as an opposing team, because we talked about trust and connecting trust. And I just want to say thank you to Scott for his fantastic presentation, because it set beautifully the scene for what I'm going to talk about as well this morning, about the things that we discussed that really helped us with a compelling argument, really for us to help represent why physical connection is so important in building trust. So I think when we've discussed about what trust means and about how consumers are feeling at the moment about the brands that they trust, lots of surveys have been taking place recently. And I'm sure you would have seen there was one that came out that was all over LinkedIn that were advertising executives below politicians. And it just goes to show that we've got a big job to do at the moment about how we build that trust. And it's how physical really plays an important part on that. Why is it so important? Building trust comes from lots of different mediums. So we're not saying that it has to be just one channel. In fact, if anything, what we've heard today, particularly if you listen to the interview with Mark Wright earlier on this morning, you would have heard us talking about the fact that building trust comes from lots and lots of different mediums. It's when that mix works really well together that makes it really truly effective. So we want to think about our nature that builds us towards the brand truths that we really enjoy and embrace. And we need to think about things that aren't in fleeting digital milliseconds, but are really built in well-rounded, considered communication. And that comes from lots of different mediums. Because right now, connectivity is absolutely essential. And I'm sure, like everybody, we've talked about it already this morning, and emails, Zoom calls, all feel like we've got square eyes. And actually what we know is that we're really craving that connection. We're desperate to get back out there. I was provided a couple bits of research a few weeks ago that showed the pent-up demand for live events, for sporting events, for us to actually be able to get out there and conduct activity as normal. So what comes with that is how we keep communicating in this period of time. And Scott was absolutely spot on when he talked about the need for brands to keep communicating. Those who've lagged behind are finding it very difficult to keep their customers at this time. So what is it about that connection that has to be there to help us trust? Brand purpose. We look for purpose in the brands we buy. We're all consumers out there, every marketer listening in, every printer, every agency listening into this today. We look for purpose in the brands that we buy. And I know that we've had Peter Dock, who's come back to share some of his views. One of his favourite brands is Patagonia. They talk endlessly about brand purpose, and theirs has changed during this period of time. They've talked about what they want to do as a brand. But we're also very conscious consumers. Our conscious consumerism has really grown during this period of time. We really want to trust the communication that we see and feel. And I can't stress that enough, because our behaviours are changing. Everything's accelerated during the pandemic. Lots of things that may have taken a few years. Mark Wright talked about it this morning. Again, we talked about the acceleration of purpose during this period of time, changing our behaviours. And it's not just about online either. It's about our preferences. What kind of things do we prefer? We've talked a lot about actually, digital brands wanting to talk to us through direct mail. Scott just mentioned the fact that some of the digital brands that he interacts with are turning to direct mail because it's a really great way to connect and to have more resonance there. But we also expect the brands that we love to love the planet that we're in as well. We expect them to communicate through lots and lots of different mediums and do that in a responsible manner. We expect to be rewarded for those behaviours, and that change the outcomes with loyalty and respect. That loyalty has to be earned. It's not always, it's not bought. But that research that we've had at the BPMA really proves that tangible resonates beyond digital interaction, and it's going to leave a lasting memory and a recall, and importantly, building that all-important trust. So it might come as no surprise after what we've just been talking about that 50% of us don't trust marketing. They see it as a ploy. There's a very interesting research paper that's conducted every year. It's called the Edelman Research Barometer. So in 2019, they do this across the world. And one of the things they measure is our trust in all sorts of things, in government, in employers, how you feel about capitalism, everything. But also they also look at marketing messages and media. So that thought is the fact that people think it's a ploy. We've really got to prove beyond absolutely no doubt that our intentions are honourable and we want to communicate in the right way. So we now know from that the direct brand experience is absolutely the heart of enforcing that trust. So we look at what those measures of trust are, and again, the dimensions of trust, how Edelman would put it, what it shows is when we look at society as a whole, where we see government, media, organisations, actually where we put this on as ethical and continuity quartiles, actually none of us really sit in that. There isn't a really overall trust in that area. So it's important for us to understand how we can actually start building that trust. So we've talked for a long time about the need to build brands, investing both in the long and the short-term marketing activation to deliver those really solid brand performances. So if we start thinking about some of the brands that we might want to think about, they're often relevant, they're compelling and better. And that absolutely is a fundamental 3 things that we believe that marketeers need to be doing in this coming year. Remaining relevant is absolutely essential. What are we missing? What are those human needs that we might be answering? We must be compelling and relevant in that area. And we also need to be better. There's a lot of competition out there. And if we're not creating something better for our futures, then we may miss the boat. So staying relevant is one of those things when we start looking at brand examples. And I'm going to give you one example. It's one of my favorite ones. I often use it as a great way to demonstrate how a brand has kept on using all of its different channels. So if I put this little guy on the screen, you know exactly who this is. Okay, I don't even need to tell you what the brand is because it's so embedded in our psyche. So Compare the Market is a digital brand. That's the only place that you're going to buy and interact with that brand. But they have come into our hearts, into our lives. These little furry creatures with their very bizarre accents have really helped us, understand what that marketing message is about. But the reason I use this one as an example is at the start of this really epic campaign that they did, every 30 seconds, we claimed a meerkat toy. Every 30 seconds. So at the start, in the first phase of their campaign, over 4 million toys were claimed, and those were premiums, and it's demonstrating that a fantastic power of plush. But when we say actually what the premiums and merchandise bring to it, so bear in mind this is an advertising message, a digital-only brand, we know that actually up to 96% of that brand building equity can only be built, and it really helps increase that power of brand awareness. I said, we don't even need to name the brand for us all to know exactly who that is. And that just demonstrates, again, what Mark Wright was talking about this morning, about the power of being known and understood for what you do. So what is it, the sort of things that we love to receive? So the research I mentioned earlier on from IMI, global research, which benchmarks all the kind of things that happen within grocery retail and across different benchmarks. And again, this comes back into some of the test and learn type experience that we know that marketers ought to be employing. When we think about employing gifts and premiums and merchandise, and we incentivize consumers, we know that 72% of us are going to be drawn by the promise of that free gift. But we also know, by ranking, it's ranked 3rd in the research that we carried out this summer, that actually if a brand can increase its market share through considerate gifting and packaging, we love this stuff, but it's not necessarily just about the freebie, it's about the relevance to you. Has that brand thought about me in what they would like to give as a gift? So what happens when we give that gift? I think importantly that brand engagement increases, and importantly that cost per impression reduces. And I think any marketer that's listening to digital terms will be thinking about the kind of cost per impression, how many hits can we get, how many click-throughs. But when we start talking about the way that gives in that impression, all of those cost per impressions start to reduce. And that's a really important factor when we're thinking about where we might put our marketing spend. So with every step of that evolving technology, our need to connect in the physical space is driven further and further. So we've got channels that are packed full of influence and hyperlink. The human connection absolutely ought to be at the forefront of every marketer's mind as they ponder the world that we're now faced with. So when we start thinking about what kind of gifts and things that we want, employers are turning to lots of hampers. We did a bit of research on actually what are the top 10, top 20 things that people are asking for. So it comes as no surprise in that top 10, things like soap and sanitizer, and that would be absolutely, needed in this in the moment in the middle of the pandemic. But that packaged all part of the discovery, and we always want those connections. But we also really want these kind of things. These are things that we remember, that we use, and they feel useful, relevant, and often reusable to us. So even when we go into the sort of top 20, things like chocolate, seeds, we've gone gardening mad. We want to have things that help our mental health. And we've also talked a little bit about the resonance of us working remotely from home. What are the things that connect us back with nature? Been lots and lots of research done on those different things. So it's no surprise really that the kind of top 20 items that people are asking for at the moment are things that we know, understand, and we feel are relevant and useful. But when we start having a look about why these things matter so much, we then go back into some of the effectiveness studies that happened over the last couple of years. I'm always really interested in effectiveness because for me, it's going to be about the measure. Yes, there's return on investments, but how effective was it? So the IPA that look after all the advertising awards, they cited a crisis in creativity in 2019. And that's quite a big dramatic thing to say. They called out the share of voice that brands enjoy. They talked about the fact that this has diminished over the last 10 years. So if they look at the effectiveness of actually what have won awards over the last 10 years, they did that measure. They worked very closely with Lesbian and Peter Field of Adam and Eve DDB and with Orlando Wood, who'd looked at and started to unpick all of that research. So why were some of those things not necessarily working? And what Orlando Wood discovered is he pointed to some of the left brain thinking that was going on, dominating some campaigns, and he felt it was leading to a very narrow perception of what their brand purpose would be. So those well-rounded theories put the place of branded materials and merchandise of print. They switch on our right brain thinking. They help us understand the connection between what the brand is trying to talk about and maybe the sales message they're trying to give. What we looked at was the fact that when you bring the right and left brain thinking together, this gives you more potential for more effective and more successful activation. And in fact, Benet and Field went on with their theory to say that campaigns with a more emotional approach were far more likely to create a long-term brand growth, but a more profitable growth using right brain thinking than a purely rational left brain message-driven strategy. And in fact, if we only apply left brain thinking to our creative campaigns, it's going to sap effectiveness over time. So when we're looking at that, measuring emotion therefore plays an absolutely essential part to how a brand performs. So driving those responses clearly is best created by a medium to elicit that response. We've talked a lot about this morning about the kind of packages that received, the beautiful envelope that's been opened. Even Mark Wright this morning, he uses his fantastic story about the butchers, and he's holding that printed piece of card, which of his loyalty campaign in his hand. And it just shows actually he feels very connected to that. He told that story and he repeats it because of the number of different things. It wasn't just about a rational sales message or a price message. They did something that really switched on the right brain thinking for those stories. So when we start thinking about the expectation of our consumers, they are expecting us to surprise and delight them, help make sure those messages are relevant. So that relevance has to be really essential when how willing you are to demonstrate allegiance to that brand. So we come back to that trust. How is that brand talking to me? What have they done to tell me that I should trust them? How have they communicated to me? Has it been relevant to me? Has it been something that I engage with? So when we start thinking about even the kind of everyday stuff we might be using, like a shopping bag, like a branded one, that's going to be something often that you're going to have chosen because you'd like to support that store, maybe in their recycling policies or their reuse policies. Even down to something like a hotel stay, you're going to book that online, you're enjoying that in person, and you pick up that branded pen from that great hotel stay. So every time you look at that pen, that takes you right back to the place where you really engage with that experience and it's memorable for you. So those notable touches are really important when we start thinking about why we buy and why we continue to buy. And I'm not just talking about shopping, I'm talking about any kind of service at all. Those notable touches will drive behaviour, which means that you're 75% more likely to buy again. And importantly, you're up to 80% more likely to recommend to others. That's incredibly powerful. But that doesn't come from just a left brain thinking campaign. This is something where we've turned on all the synapses in your brain to help you remember and feel positively towards that brand. So there's no doubt the resonance and enforcement of brand identity can be delivered in a single touch point when it's needed. But in reality, we need everything to work together and ultimately deliver the experience to get the intangible. There's memories created by touch. And when we talk about merchandise, when we talk about prints, the packaging that it comes in, all of those really emotional connections are so important. We need to delight the senses when we turn everything on. So when we think about that beautiful notebook that you've been delivered that might be embossed with your company's logo, might even have your name on it. If you think about opening up that beautiful package of brownies that's been sent to you that maybe has got a thank you message from your boss for saying, thank you for all your hard work you've done. You've really stuck with it over this period of time. All of those messages delivering through a physical medium allow you to develop a new relationship with consumers and customers. And you can communicate values and beliefs through very well chosen materials and the packaging that it comes in. So when we're thinking about all of those different things, those positive feelings, we want to engage directly with that experience. But when I think about the overall measure of effectiveness, and it's been fascinating for me working with the BPMA in this last year when I took over as CEO, we talk about the effectiveness, about what happens if you're not there anymore. So for me, the measure is, would this brand be missed if it was no longer here? What happens? This is one of the ultimate measures. So in no other medium can areas like print and merchandise, with that weight measure in the hand, deliver such an effective association. So when we're thinking back about some of the things we've heard over the last couple of days, all the fantastic speakers giving their updates of Epic, and at the end of this really quite extraordinary year that we've all lived through, we have to think about what kind of messages we keep giving. And we must think about the proven effective messages that really work. Long-term brand building, I think everyone said it today, we must keep communicating and building those brands. But that sensory experience is going to drive that right and left brain thinking that's going to deliver a more profitable campaign from your side. So I'm going to start wrapping up my session, and hopefully there might be some questions. There's a few questions coming in at the moment, but obviously I'm going to do a little bit like Scott did and put a pitch in and say that in order to surprise, delight and inspire, we'd love you to be buying from BPMA members. You can buy through confidence and lots of expert advice. And obviously we also have our charter level as well, which means you can't get any better. So it's been great delight to be obviously last speaker in today. And hopefully that's going to give us an idea about why we won that debate. And we were singing We Are the Champions at the end of it in a really unabashed way. So I'm going to be hanging around a little bit at the end, but there hopefully might be some questions as well. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can talk to Graham and Lucy. And hopefully that will give everyone a little bit of insight.
That was okay. Very good. Always very well articulated.
It's fun. We love talking about this stuff. It's great fun because we know what everyone's talked about this morning is all this stuff matters. We have to keep communicating. We've got to do it in a number of different ways. So it's a really exciting time to talk about what we've learned this year.
Yeah, I was just saying as well, wouldn't it have been great if we were actually in person at the House of...
Oh, it'd be wonderful. Yeah. Yes, it feels very strange to do this kind of thing virtually, talking about physical environment. But I think, we've had so much come through. But I think it was interesting with Scott and Mark talking about what they'd had through the post and some of the interactions they'd had. Actually, I really pore over the post in this way, and I've had fantastic mailers come through myself, and it makes a big difference, and it's driven me to some online events as a result. So yeah, I can't wait till we can all do this again in person.
Right, we've had a question from Robert. Fast food franchises in the US constantly test new products. The scope is often small, but how should a printer position a supporting service for testing new product introductions, a premium service? ?
Interesting question. So I think there's probably something to do with finding your advocates. So I think Scott used the example of Sweaty Betty talking to his wife and doing some of those video consultations. It's possible, I would think, from a test and learn perspective, is how you select those advocates, either your low use, your low repeating customers or your high repeating customers, finding out what's important about the service, kind of things that they enjoy, and maybe bring in some different mediums and measures about how you can communicate with them. But there's quite it's an interesting one actually about how they could do the supporting service. I think if they were going to, I would be looking for the advocacy. I'd be looking for the come and experience it, tell us what you think, warts and all. And I think when we're looking at shared experiences and maybe reviews, for example, it's really important to share the good and the bad as well, and then how you might act on it. So I think it depends what the scope of that question could be, because there could be a little bit more to it, I suspect.
Yeah. As I know you know, the promotional merchandise industry was equally as affected as other industries with COVID. However, there was much praise for the way the promotional merchandise industry re-galvanized and gathered itself quickly to get involved with PPI, and quickly people had to become experts in fields that they weren't. I think the true value of an association was really sort of highlighted, both internally and externally, looking in and as well as looking out. But for marketeers who are not within the sector necessarily, not necessarily in the know, the trade associations are there and they are a relevant pointing signpost. But how do we maintain the communication dialogue long after COVID is a thing of the past, and making sure that we're...
Absolutely. A lot of this is about actually demonstrating that people are open and that the service is open. And I think having been involved, so the BPMA are members of the Advertising Association, so we have a fantastic forum to go and talk to other bodies and also other kind of end user markets as well. And I think the fact that we've all been so remote has made it very difficult for people to understand who's open and who's there. So I think the first and foremost has been for us to communicate that we're open and there are things going on, there are orders happening, and actually there's been an enormous surge towards the end of this year. In fact, I think we have a cardboard shortage at the moment because there's so much going on, which I didn't think words I'd ever think I could probably necessarily say. So I think the first thing would be carry on communicating that we're open. It's also looking at the capacity in the supply chain and looking at what's changed. Obviously, we're about to hit transition in days' time. We have been talking about Brexit a lot as well, and about also making sure that those firms are equipped and say that we're ready to take that on too. So we're there ready to service the rest of the industry. Events will be coming back online. There is enormous pent-up demand. So what we're seeing is a great resurgence in the industry of planning ahead. So we're now looking at when almost it's a bit like it's like in the starting blocks, waiting for it all to come down the line. And what will come with that is a lot of print and packaging and stuff as well. So I think we can't wait to get the next year moving. But I think ours has been the primary thing will be communicating the industry is open and available, the supply chain and the capacity is there. And come what may, we're making sure that we can deliver fantastic merchandise for everybody to have more meerkat moments along the way.
Nice.
Have you Have you seen an increase in companies rewarding their staff with merchandise as opposed to just using this as a vehicle to reward customers?
Hugely, yeah, it's been massive. So actually, fun enough, we've been conducting. I think we did our 25th webinar, I think. Today we've been feeding out information. And in fact, actually, because I took over just before lockdown happened, one of the first things we did, we were getting back on and sort of talk about what the government wanted to talk about. But then since then, we've been talking about how the industry needs to service. And one of the things that's come up, we've done lots of member interviews to find out what's been happening in their businesses, and it's gone bananas. I mean, we're just about to put our next issue of our magazine to bed, and some of our key contributors are so behind because all they're doing is packing up boxes. They're going out as thank yous, rewards to staff, and this is people, employees desperate to hampers have gone bananas, or hampering. I'm not quite sure what the expression would be, but we've got lots and lots going out, and I think this is hence why we've got anything that could go into a box and get to somebody's home has been sent out. And of course, that's come with that is lots of reminders about use of data, particularly personal data. This is not business data. So there's been a lot of accelerated learning or readapting in different things, but also that rediscovery of that delight. Actually, yes, of course you can send that to someone. It's what I meant about the box of brownies that you open up, and the fact that we've got companies literally they can't bake those things fast enough at the moment or get the pens printed. But there's been lots of really considered gifts, lots of care packages, water bottles, antimicrobial coatings ready to welcome people back in the office next year. So there's a lot of preparation. So I think the long answer, yes, absolutely, there's all of that, and I'm sure that will continue as we've continued to reward and thank people for really just sticking with it this year, because it's we've really all had to dig deep and keep going.
Yeah, we certainly have, and I think the one of the key things is as trade associations and promotional merchandise is such a big contributor to materials and physical elements of materials. There's got to be the next generation of buyers who are going to be thinking more than just the product. They're going to be thinking about the sustainability, the environmental accreditations. I mean, what sort of measures are you guys putting in place now with that view for the future?
Absolutely. So it's going to be one of our key strategic pillars moving into next year. And in fact, funny enough, my incoming into the BPMA was research sustainability. So we conducted research over the summer with consumers, looking about what they were looking for. And again, I think this comes into our end user buyers at the moment. There is an expectation that sustainability will already be on the table. This is not a nice to have. This is like almost like a hygiene factor in what we're considering, but also the fact there should be an optional move into, how things are packaged and sent out right the way through. So we talk about kind of carbon neutral kind of footprint for everybody. So it's absolutely, from the BPMA's perspective, it's absolutely a core focus for us next year. There's been a lot of other announcements of the rest of the advertising marketing industry about how they're adopting sustainability because of the acceleration the pandemic has brought. So really critical focus for us this year, and we're going to be coming out with some exciting thoughts about the journey that we're on as an industry to really hit some of those sustainable goals that we know the industry is expecting us to do, and we are already working on in a lot of detail.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, I think I had a look on the chats. I think we're pretty much there on the questions. Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, that was it. It was so brilliant. There were no questions.
Well, yeah, exactly. When you cover everything off so well. Yeah, from us, I think it's really important that we just remain connected as industries, and I mean industries in the plural sense. Print is very proud, but what becomes print is there's paper, there's the OEMs, there's manufacturing, there's all sorts of things that come through to that, the finishing elements as well as the machinery. So there's so many areas within print. Promotional has got exactly the same sectors and pieces that all go together. It's just making sure that we remain connected, and the engagement that we have with the BPMA from IPIA's perspective is great, because they are so intertwined. We're talking about packaging earlier today. Packaging and promo go hand in hand, in terms of not just on the retail, but on actually gifting and making sure that everything is packaged properly. So
yeah. It's been fantastic this year, Greg. I think the collaboration that we've all had across all the trade bodies, and obviously we talk, I talk to Brendan often and talk to Marion, obviously, who's hosting the event with yourselves. So having that collaboration, I think it's all of those shared goals have come even closer together. So from our side, things are fantastic, and long may it continue.
Absolutely. Here, here.